Alright, so what's up, it's your boy Stark and I'm back here with another video. Now this is gonna be me talking about something more fate related, so I know it's gonna be a first, I want to talk about more anime that I have been talking about. I mean, my most, I think the most I have talked about a series, maybe twice, with maybe Black Clover being the second most talked about thing on the first most talked about thing on my channel. So honestly, I do want to introduce more anime, and especially since I have seen a lot, watched a lot, and played a lot of visual novels, such as especially of the Fate series. So honestly, this is gonna be a Fate, kind of a Fate kind of review or discussion, and it's going to be centered around the first Lostbelt. Now, I probably will go back and start covering certain of the singularities before that, but I just feel like, honestly, I just want to discuss the first Lostbelt and how it made me feel, since, honestly, I think it's really great. I think it's peak fiction fate. It's peak fiction fate for me. A lot of people might not like it, but I feel like, honestly, it's one of those things, and one of those story arcs that are really good in what they mean and stuff like that. So if the first Lost Belt is definitely kind of a great intro into what the Lost Belts are and how they operate, and pretty much kind of just to test the waters on or how our emotions and stuff like that, and test the waters of certain things that the stories might be going into a little bit later, and kind of just testing certain different realities that the main character, us, and us in quotation marks, will be dealing with Mash and the other people on the shadow border. Now, the thing that makes the first Lost Belt really interesting is it's our first look into a world where it's a world where it's not us just going into or getting sent back into a time period and worrying about everything being completely fine once we left, and thinking that America or any type of the history that is supposed to follow would have went straight back to normal, like anything has ever happened. Now with this, since it's a big what if, and it turns like a big what if, the moment you try to the moment you try to correct it, it automatically gets pruned and pretty much erased. So I feel like it's our big, it was our first kind of step into the main character in MASH learning to deal with the grief that they have erased a whole entire thing where people were living, and people were maybe not all peaceful lives, but they were still managing to live and had their own way of thinking and stuff like that, just to find out that they pretty much just erased that from the people they made, the people they met, and people who think they have their whole entire future in front of them. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I feel like it was a nice transition from what we was doing in the first the singularities up into Solomon, now going into what we are dealing with Lost Belt 1, and it was just like a nice intro into what these Lost Belts are, and what emotions and stuff like that should be carried throughout the story within this one. Now, I feel like Anastasia, hold up, I think it's the Duchess Anastasia of Akina. I can't remember the exact title for it, but it's pretty much centered around Russian. So you get you get some your main Russian characters like Anastasia, Ivan the Terrible, Ivan the Terrible, and Rasputin, and those major Lost Belt servants, are where they're like the characters, like the character forms from that exact that was built kind of upon what the foundation of that Lost Belt was. So there's a lot that doesn't comply with proper human history in terms of Anastasia, like how Anastasia could, if she walked this path of sorcery and stuff like that, then that's how she will be able to become a liable servant in that history, and to be able to be summoned. It's just certain things and certain rules that has to deal with the certain summoning things that it has to deal with within each Lost Belt, each condition, how far enough does the character change, because a history figure that might not have been that important to be able to have to become a strong servant in proper human history, and that Lost Belt, whatever they're built on, could make them way entirely stronger. Like I said, with Anastasia in proper human history, I think that she got killed after her family got pretty much sent like that. Even though there's a Anastasia where which is, Ivan's wife in proper human history, there's another Anastasia that really doesn't, they aren't the same people. But yeah, it's how do I put it? In the Lost Belt, she had magic. She was dealing with, her family was dealing with magic and stuff like that. So it built a better foundation is for her to become a way stronger servant. But that's not let's get into the story part, which is kind of my favorite thing. Honestly, I feel like the story for Lost Belt 1 was really good. The world building was really good, and I just love how, even though this little thing, like a certain thing could change, like a code, like within this case, within the story case, a certain code blew in and wouldn't stop. So by that time, people have to start changing their lifestyles. They have to start, changing to the point like where it changed their body. There are literally wolves that, you know, they're literally wolves that evolved from humans because of what their body needs. What their body needed to, live in the code. And the way that the world built, even though this is Russia, the way that it is set up is completely different from Russia. Now, let's be from, America's Russian or anything like that. That's the entire environment they live by, where it's like going to the point where like it's going back to strong eats the weak. And even if you're weak, if you can be strong enough to take on the strong, it's just a pretty much a cycle of just people being discarded when they're too weak, and the strong being overly celebrated for in that society. It's just like turned into a dog eat dog world where like it's just a lot of stuff that's happening. You're either strong or you're not. Even if you come old, there's no sympathy for those people. There's no reason to go out your way to save people, even if you have a lick of emotion inside you. The thing is, it's just kind of really hard. Not really hard, but it's kind of a good thing that like the world building was so unique to the characters, and everything just made sense on how the characters thought. And I feel like honestly, this character, it brings us to like a character that I really can enjoy. And even though he's a single arc character where we're not going to be able to see him no more, I feel like honestly the impact he brought up on the story and the way that his thought process was changing the more he met people, the more he saw things, and seeing stuff from his perspective made him much more of an enjoyable character. Paxty. Honestly, I want to do my own video on him because he's definitely a person or a character that deserves his own video, and he deserves his own analysis or my take video on, because honestly he's a great character for what he does in that single story. Now I feel like honestly the thing that makes the story so good is that all throughout we're seeing different people's opinion on, oh well, since we came from a proper human history, we have this viewpoint because of certain things we have, like, and certain things we did, like, when we see weak in need, sometimes we, like, even though that's not how America run by now, but in the way that most people think about it, if we see somebody weak in need, we try to help them, like, charities and stuff, like, the way we saw, the way we live life is that if we have anything to spare, we can help somebody else out, we automatically do it. Even though, like I said, that's not how everybody thinks. But, and this is, hypothetically speak about this, how with the where they come from, if anybody needed a hand, they help them out. Whether they're weak, they help out the elderly, they help out the kids. Like, nobody was ready to, be thrown on the, or forgotten about because of, just because you're not strong enough. Everybody has their own weaknesses, and everybody had the mindset to where, that weaknesses, that they shouldn't take advantage of others, even though, like I said, that sometimes happens. And versus a point of view from I want to say the Yaga standpoint is where they see they been through a lot of stuff to the point where like that's the only way they think they can survive. They lost a lot of their, even though they are supposed to be advanced human, they lost a lot of their heart, mercy and stuff like that. They lost a lot of those human emotions and gave it up to strong eat strong, and you do anything to not displease favor with somebody who we worship, like Ivan Teleber, like the Tsar, Ivan the Terrible, which is a Tsar, but rest in history. But to upset the Tsar, so that even if that meant selling out the person, your neighbor, or just doing stuff, that means that even though that might seem cowardly, it's just doing whatever you need to survive. Even though it also is a strong eat strong world, like strong eat weak world. So I mean, honestly, it's just going back to how can you get your best possible life without worrying about anybody else. How to be the most selfish person just to live, and that's what I kind of meant by like the world building and how it greatly incorporates and passes off the story. And honestly, like I said, even the Tsar at the end of the story still has something. Even though that he became somebody that became really uncontrollable, really something, he thought he was doing the best for his people, which is kind of something that to a certain extent that he wouldn't let himself be defeated if he wanted. He tried to do the best he could for his people, and that just got twisted the farther and farther down and went the road. Because he thought that the only way for them to survive was to do these experiments and do certain things like that, and try to and for him to keep it being alive, to be able to you know try to get really just try to protect the people that he thought is his subjects, and his, I don't want to say community, but his citizens. But yeah, it's just kind of fun to see how much of a little world that that this Lostbelt could have taken in. But honestly, the complete story is, I just feel like honestly it's a really, really amazing story. Touched my heart when Paxton went up and died, and because was just so great of a character, and honestly just the way to think and the way that the conclusion was. I feel like honestly Salieri playing his version of Dies Res was really good. But honestly, I just can't wait to see more interactions between him and Mozart in the future. There's so many things in this story that I really enjoy. Such as Salieri, who kind of prides himself on being the person that killed Mozart. Even though him and Mozart was best friends and he never killed him, the only way his spirit origin was strong enough is by being the man in gray and, being the one who killed Mozart. So, but him, like, honestly going through everything and, playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star at the end, and also just from like all the characters just involved. I love Beowulf, Billy the Kid. Honestly, Atlantis Altar's character is really great. Even though she's like a altar, I think one of her strongest selling points is that she carries the majority of the same, the same motives as Atlanta. Like, it's for her caring about the killing. I mean the killing, caring about the children, and so on and so on. And honestly, I just feel like the motive she had for facing us in the end was totally justified. Is that she made, even though she kind of had an inkling that whatever happened, this world might not survive, she tried her best to defend it the best she could, even if that mean going against, Master King OJ, which is me. But I'm a nerd. But it's just one of those things where I feel like the story, even though it was like an intro into the Lostbelt, is did really good at solidifying itself. It is a single story and a multitude of stories, which is basically meaning that even though this is supposed to be connected to the other Lostbelts, and they further develop the plot for each of the Lostbelts, this Lostbelt, which the second one does feel too, and I feel like all of them will continue to feel like this. It feels like it is able to tell its own little story, meanwhile being able to connect to really heavily connected to the other stories, which a lot of series can fail to do sometimes, because it comes, like, how I put it, it takes the right amount of a certain things that might connect a certain art to a certain art to be in for that whole entire arc not to be turned into something else, or like the arc that from like from that arc just not being able to, how I put it, for like if like something is introduced out of the ordinary and like the close to the end arc, we automatically just think that like it's switching over to like automatically to a new arc. Well, I can't really properly explain it like I want to, but yeah, it's just one of those things that I just really enjoy about the story. But in summary, because the video is kind of getting quite long, I really enjoyed this story. I feel like from everything, the world building, the characters, and the way they acted, and it just made sense to me. And even though it's set in Russia, it's just so great to see, the aspect of how a single action can, or a single thing that could change, could develop something, and develop into a civilization. Civilization is this. But also, I think one of the biggest things is kind of just flipping what the first thing, the first, single language is about, and turning them into something else. Like with the Lostbelt, you have to, instead of just being like in the past where you get shipped somewhere, you fix the problem, you get out. Even though I'm like making that seem simple, that's kind of what happened. You get out, and human history, continues to course, being saved, and everything goes back to normal like nothing ever happened. Versus with this, you have to become a person that destroys something entirely, completely erases it. Even though you meet all these people, you talk to them, you go to their houses, you eat with them, you talk, you just become friends with them. You have them for it's just so many things that that happen that makes you grow attached to them. Then you have to realize that at the end, you have to let it go. You have to be the one to destroy that entire existence. That existence now exists no more, and it's just something that something that kind of just teaches you really a lesson as a character, especially since like you were this hero before. Now like you're feeling like a villain because you're taking these kids, or you're taking like these other people who thought that they would live their full entire lives and stuff like that. You're taking their lives away from them. You're taking literally everything that their story was built upon and just stripping it away from them. But yeah, I feel like the Lost Belts are a really great mode of storytelling. And, like I said, the flipping the whole entire thing. But honestly, I just really enjoyed the Lost Belts for what they are. The stories inside them are really great. The characters we meet inside them are great characters that potentially, as far as they go on, even if the thing doesn't change, or even though certain things can change, like Paxi and Gerda doesn't feel like the same character, but like that's, I would do like a Lost Belt 2 thing too. But yeah, it's just one of those things that like it gives you something to think about, especially with the character. So, but yeah, this video is getting way too long. So, this has been Stark OJ. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, you subscribe to your boy. I'm almost at 40 subscribers, which is not that much, but it's somewhere. It's somewhere. But yeah, if you also have something that you kind of want me to discuss, that you can put it down below in the comments below. But yeah, this is LGO. And, like, let me know how I did on this video. If I ramble too much, I'm trying to get better at like doing stuff like this. And I think I gotten fairly better from when I started. But I'll need any tips to improve and stuff like that. I'll definitely take them. But yeah, this has been Stark OJ. Peace.